we're very much in that frenetic breathing pattern. We're overly stressed. It's just like we're looking around like, what's everybody doing? What do I need to do to like fit in and stay safe? Because like to be healthy, to be different in this society, to really step away from what everybody's doing takes a amount of courage, takes some
Yeah.
power, takes some energy. So if you don't have your health,
Welcome, Ted. Great to have you on board. Ted Hanik from Hanik Health. Ted, tell us straight up, what's going on with the subconscious mind and the why have you become so passionate about health and subconscious mind?
yeah, I mean, it's something that for me, it's my story. I grew up pretty standard American diet, typical North American male. And I found myself at a point in my life where I was pretty unhealthy. And that was really having an impact on my ability to do my life. And I started to clean up my act. I started to clean up my diet, started to detox my body, started to really clean up the things that I was allowing in. And then my consciousness shifted. All of a sudden, my consciousness started to rise. And that was a really interesting offshoot. And I started to learn more about subconscious mind, manifestation, law of attraction, energy. And these things all tie together, basically getting your health, your vessel healthy, and then changing your mindset, and it's something, just my calling in life is to help people to shed, to shed all the things in our environment that we've been told, that we've been really lied to. And it's a way for everybody to reclaim their power, because that's really been my experience, is that when you get your health back and you start to reprogram the subconscious mind, your whole experience of life transforms. So that's been my experience. And I love giving that experience to other people.
That's fantastic, Ted. I can really relate to what you're sharing there. And what was the turning point for you in your health journey?
Well, gosh, I got to a point where, I mean, I'm about 5'6", 5'7", and I was at my peak. I mean, I stopped weighing myself because I just didn't even want to know. But I was about 215 pounds, and in my mind, I always thought I was like this healthy guy, right? Because I could go to the gym, I could bench press quite a lot of weight, and I just thought, like, for some reason that was like I'm healthy because I could bench press a bunch of weight. But I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself anymore. And I just had all kinds of issues. I had digestive issues. I just felt overly stressed, brain fog. It was like I hit a point where, I don't know if maybe you can relate to this, but I just said enough, like enough. I can't continue to do this. And that's, I think, a testament to my own programming, my own subconscious mind, whatever you want to call it, that I hit a point where I looked in the mirror and I just said, I don't want to live like this any longer. And I didn't know what to do back then. I had no clue what to do, but I knew I had to do something. And I was having like digestive issues, like I said, and it was really like the health challenges were starting to reveal themselves to me. And I wasn't even that old. I was like in my late 20s. So where would I be like if I hadn't made that change? I'm now 48 years old. So I very easily could be morbidly obese. I could have all kinds of health challenges. And, it's really a challenge. I mean, I look at myself now as like I'm in my prime, and it's only because I made those changes and alterations back then.
That's powerful. I can relate to it. I had the epiphany when I was 60. My father was a world champion swimmer, and when he died, I said I would like to be at least half the man he was, and all those sort of things. And I looked at someone at the bank where I was working in one of the top 4 banks in digital, and I looked at someone really fat, and I thought, "Oh God, that guy's going to have an early grave." And I got home, looked in the mirror, and there I was. So I was the epitome of him, and I was so ashamed. And yeah, I just, like you, I had that wake up call and that realization. I thought I was healthy and fit, but yeah, and I turned it around. So, what are some simple tips for people to get their health on track?
Well, it doesn't have to be overly complicated, right? So I started really going down the rabbit hole, learning about everything holistic health, detoxification, and how to bring our diet back in line. And like, there's so much different philosophies out there when it comes to health and wellness. And I always tell people, like, being healthy is pretty simple. I mean, it's just our modern society that's made things so overly complicated. You have to navigate all these assaults. So, I mean, look back to what, like your great grandparents did. I mean, they were completely crazy. They ate nothing but organic food, free range animals. They got outside. They spent plenty of time in the dirt and farming and foraging. So it's only, us in our modern life that has really made things overly complicated. Like here, I'm sitting here, I got this light on me, so I got all this EMF from the computer, and I'm sitting all day typically. So we all have to work to just like overcome our environment, and it can be really challenging if we want to talk about subconscious mind. Look at all the inputs that is going into the subconscious mind on a daily basis, especially if you're sitting there watching CNN, you're watching TV, and it's all about this, the ticker along the bottom, how many people are dying, and everything is overwhelm and stress and anxiety. And so to be healthy, it's a removal process at first. It's really, that's been my experience. Like, your relationship to your stimulation, like morning coffee, your evening alcohol, your consumption of television and mass media and programming. How much of this stuff are you taking in? And really releasing a lot of stress. That's really the biggest piece, is to lower your overall stress. That's chemical, physical, and emotional stress. And most people, unfortunately, are stressed out to the max. They have no idea what is that costing you. Taking energy back into the body, really relaxing into your day, having a way to ease and focus on your breath. I think a lot of people are very stuck in that kind of fight or flight autonomic nervous system, and they don't even know what it's like to be relaxed. And it's really unfortunate. And this is really, like, if you look at what's going on right now in the world, it's like everybody's having their stress response put through the roof. So how do we get healthy, right? How do we get healthy is really to bring some more energy back into the body. I mean, we can talk about the fundamentals, the basics, but I think the root thing that most people should focus on is lowering overall stress, chemical, physical, emotional. And that's really the basis of everything. We can talk deeper about diet, exercise, all the rest of it, but that's really the basics. Keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I guess cortisol and insulin are something that the average person in the street don't think about or understand the relationship to stress. And I know certainly for me, I've ditched the TV, and I've pretty much stay away from mainstream media, and taking in the information of what's going on at the moment. I meditate. That's what I need to balance all this. Otherwise, I start to take on things that I don't need to take on. So yeah, I really hear you loud and clear. And I think the journey to health has a lot to do with mindset. And I know that you're big on mindset, and you are a self-sabotage coach. Now, that sounds funny. You're going to teach people to self-sabotage, but you're anti-self-sabotage. So I'd love to hear more about that, because guilty, Your Honor, about self-sabotage. Like, I love what you said. These were your words when we spoke outside the interview. You said, you can eat all the right foods, do all the exercise, and then 10 weeks later you're on the couch with your bowl of ice cream, because of mindset. You sabotage. So yeah, tell us something around that sort of stuff, because that I find to be the bottom line is our attitude. That's how we overcome our obstacles. So yeah, hit me up with that.
Yeah, I think what we have to come to understand is how the subconscious mind works, and really understand how we've all been conditioned and programmed in our subconscious mind from a very early age to believe a certain way of thinking. And so the subconscious mind, I mean, if you look at the subconscious mind, it's taking in tons of information from your periphery. 11 million pieces of information a second the subconscious mind is taking in. So, I mean, that sounds like a lot, right? But excuse me, the subconscious mind is taking in 11 million pieces of information a second. And so basically what we have to understand is, like, if you're not controlling the inputs, you're going to get a very predictable cascade of outputs. And so if you look at what is happening in the world, like, look at what basically everybody believes, right? If I breathe on you, that's going to give you some sort of an illness that's going to make you ill. Well, that's never actually been proven to exist at all. But we've all been conditioned to believe that that's true. We've all been conditioned to believe certain things about, like, what's the appropriate age to get married? What's the appropriate amount of children to have? What is the appropriate career or trajectory to have? Maybe you're doing a job you don't even like, but you're doing it because this is what everybody else is doing. The Super Bowl just passed. So everybody's like, well, it's a Super Bowl. It's like a national holiday. We'll sit down and watch football, drink beer, eat hot wings. And it's like, do you even care? I mean, these football players have no attachment to anything that happens in your life, but you're investing your time and energy in watching them. Well, that's all because all this downloads in our society has basically been driven into our subconscious mind. And subconscious mind is looking for the repeated behaviors that it takes in, because this is a survival based mechanism back to our ancient biology. So if we were living out on the savannah or out in the wilderness, basically it would be a way for us all to remain safe because we're safer in numbers. And so if we're not careful, we will cling to the tribe, cling to the patterns of the herd. And we have to do a pattern interrupt to understand that that's what's happening. Because if you look at us here in North America, if you look at iatrogenic death by the hands of the allopathic system, I mean, back in 2016, Johns Hopkins University said that iatrogenic death killed somewhere between 250,000 people a year up to 300,000. They don't really know. It's a total guess. And that was back in 2016. So where is it now in 2022 with what we have going on right now? And I see a lot of people running headlong off of a cliff in terms of their health and wellness. And it's basically because the entire herd is just running headlong off of a cliff. So the subconscious looks around and says, okay, I guess we live in a herd of people that are running headlong off of a cliff. So here we go. Let me pick up speed. And so we have to understand that that's what the subconscious is doing. It's categorizing, it's taking in data, information. And as a child, we take in 90 million pieces of information a second. So as children, we're like literal sponges. And so all this information is categorized and organized in a way such that basically, if we're not in control of our autonomic stress response, is why I talked about, stress, right? So if you're overly stressed, you're in that fight or flight limbic system, you're in your front brain. It's like basically you're very much focused on like reaction, what's happening right now. You're not so focused on like long-term thinking. You're focused on like this immediate second. And so you're just more inclined to cling harder to the tribe. And so if we bring our overall stress level down, all of a sudden we start to have an opening. We start to be able to understand that if we don't control our environment and we don't start to control our inputs, we're very much in that frenetic breathing pattern. We're overly stressed. It's just like we're looking around like, what's everybody doing? What do I need to do to like fit in and stay safe? Because like to be healthy, to be different in this society, to really step away from what everybody's doing takes an amount of courage, takes some power, takes some energy. So if you don't have your health, if you don't have your lowered stress response, if you don't understand like what is being taken in through the subconscious mind through all these downloads and inputs, then you're just literally like living out the life of a robot, basically. And so it just becomes like, how do we break free? And I think that's really the challenge of our times, is to understand that it's an unlearning process. That's really what we're faced with. I mean, I'm 48 years old, so I have all these downloads and inputs from my entire life. And I have to work really hard to breathe and release and realize like, you have to individually like take a second and realize like, does this belief pattern or what I'm holding on so tightly to, does it actually serve me or is it working against me? And if you look around, you got to take a look around and go, well, what is it that most people are doing and what sort of result are they getting? And then you have to be able to differentiate and start to navigate and start to learn how to walk again, basically. And it's really important to surround your environment with the messages that are going to feed the subconscious mind that you're in a place of abundance. You have abundant health, you have abundant wealth, you're okay, you're doing fine, you're enough, you're the leader people are looking for, you have all the things that you need at your disposal. We have so many messages that we've all taken in that have just been about lack and competition and somebody has to lose in order for me to win, that kind of mentality. And I think it's really high time to understand that we deserve to all come together, to realize that we're stronger together than we are apart. That's another piece of this agenda, is to drive us further apart. And I think it's really important that we come together. We understand how we are meant to be together. We're meant to be strong together to help each other. I mean, I think it's beautiful what you're doing with like bringing people together, sharing content, sharing information, realizing we can release all these traumas, these stresses, and start to take back what has been taken from us, which is our health. And that's really my message and my story, because I was able to reclaim my health. And I think a lot of people just allow the system to dictate what their life is going to look like. And so if they're in that stress response, they go, well, I don't feel well. My back hurts. I have a headache. I have whatever I have. And they go off to their allopathic doctor to quote unquote fix them. And then they're caught up in the system. And there's no ownership, there's no responsibility. And so if you want to bring it back to subconscious mind, self-sabotage, it's like we have an entire society of people that are looking for other people to tell them what to do. An entire society of people that are living in a very childlike mentality, instead of taking ownership and taking that proper rite of passage from child to adult and saying, this is how it's meant to be. This is where I am in my power. I know how to take care of my health, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to be told how to live my life like this anymore.
Yeah, like I guess my understanding when you mentioned about 11 million bits of information, I think bits come down to chunks. I think there's 156 bits in a chunk, and we can only really take in 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information in our conscious mind. So I guess most people are in some sort of overwhelm. The great psychologist of the late 80s, oh gosh, can't remember his name, but he says most people live a life of quiet desperation. And I think overwhelm, people don't get to sift and disseminate what's valuable for them. And yeah, I really hear what you're saying on the self-sabotage track and the overwhelm and taking in that information. That's why meditation, a lot of people have asked me about that. And I said, just sit still for 5 minutes. Just start there. You know, if you can actually sit down for 5 minutes and not be like a cat on the top of a hot tin roof, you've started the process towards stillness. And it's like recharging your iPhone. Sooner or later, you've got to put the plug back in and recharge because the batteries are run down. It's like little Johnny, go to the corner, Johnny, time out. You know, have some time out from your dizziness and your mental mess of trying to disseminate the world. I mean, I've tried it. I can't disseminate the world. I can't pull it apart and put it back together again and say, now I understand it. I have to make sure that I have a rest from the mind stuff so that I can go into what's important. So how do you achieve breakthrough results in your life? What sort of actions do you take to take yourself from that sort of caught up in the whirligig to having some stillness? Where does it start for you?
That's a really great question. I mean, it's really a letting go process. I think it's really important to understand that we have an addiction. A lot of us, we believe that if you see somebody waking up and drinking vodka or whiskey first thing in the morning and they're strung out on alcohol or any number of situations, you wag your finger and you go, that person has a real problem. They have an addiction and we need to address it. And certainly we do. But many of us, you know, I would venture to guess basically all of us have an addiction to a set of feelings. And so you become very addicted to the payoff of being overwhelmed, stressed out. You know, you have a deadline or you have something you're working towards and you delay, you put it off, you procrastinate. And then that gives you a payoff, right? To be stressed out or to push really hard. And then like, oh, I barely made it or I didn't make it. And to fulfill those set of feelings about being undesirable or not being able to receive or not fulfilling on your obligations. And so it's really a letting go process. And it's really about breathing and releasing these feelings of inadequacy, the feelings of stress and overwhelm. And that really speaks to my story. And it's something that is really unfortunate that I think a lot of people live with quiet desperation, like you said, where it's, you know, it's something, yeah, I think William James. So it's really important to, you know, start like you said with meditation, or like I love just get outside, you know, get outside, go out in the forest and take your shoes and socks off, do some earthing and grounding, focus on your diet. I think diet is huge. Most people take that kind of for granted, that, you know, they think about diet in terms of like, I want to fit better in my bathing suit, but your gut has an afferent communication up to the brain. So if you have gut dysbiosis, if your gut is really off and you have leaky gut or you have undigested proteins making their way outside the digestive tract, your body's in a constant state of inflammation. So that sends alarm messages up to the brain. And then you're going to just have a way harder time to get into a parasympathetic rest and digest if all of a sudden all these alarm bells are going off in your system. So it's really it's like they say, holistic view of health, right? Holistic. So that's why we have a very, you know, in the allopathic system, it's basically like you go off to the specialist, you go to the ear, nose, and throat guy, and then you go to the podiatrist. It's all broken up into segments. And if you're not careful, like nobody has any idea what's going on with the entire picture of health. And that's how there's a lot of errors made, and they're trying to medicate different symptoms you have, where Whereas we can, look, I'm just a guy that had an extreme interest in health and wellness. So I started studying, started researching, started experimenting, trying things. And I found that, like, wow, if I try this, I have a different experience of life. If I do this, and if I tell somebody else to do this, they get the same result. And it's like, this isn't super complicated. I mean, yeah, it takes a little bit of work and takes some study, it takes a commitment, but it's really important to understand like how we can start to like have a structure to our day, structure our day, be committed to something that you're in action on, that gives you purpose, gives you passion. Like if you're, for example, if you're working a job that you absolutely hate, well, that's fine if it provides you with the means to work on a passion project or something that you're doing to better yourself. And I find that in my own life, what's really helped me to stay grounded and to feel like I'm ascending consciousness is to be engaged in a conversation towards what are we creating together, or how can I help somebody today. And I think we all become like this in the society. We have our blinders on. We're just like we're just trying to pay our mortgage and get through the day. And I think it's really unfortunate, like one of the things that springs me out of bed in the morning is in this distinction that's pleasure versus pain. So the subconscious mind will always seek out pleasure and wants to avoid pain. And the biggest pain in life is the pain of regret, right? Like we don't want to leave the music inside.
Yeah.
You want to get whatever gift you have out to the world. And that's really, we deserve to hear your specific voice. You have a voice, you deserve to use it. And I think that's really the calling of our time as well, is that we all collectively find our voice and say no to what's happening, what's being thrust upon us, and that we're reconnected with the divine, that we're reconnected with source. And that comes from, like we we're talking about, it comes from cleaning up the subconscious downloads that you're allowing in. That's part of like the picture of what your subconscious mind is actually going to tell you where you exist. So if you're taking in a lot of this stress and all the violence and all the, like how many people are in the streets and dying supposedly, or if you're taking in messages of hope, abundance, and connection. So to boil it down, it's really about controlling your environment, connecting with your purpose, whatever that might be, and being in action, being committed to making the world a better place. That's really, look, I have two young boys, and this isn't even about me, right? I mean, I'm 48 years old. Obviously, I'd love to live a nice, long, and healthful life, but my commitment is that I leave a world to my children that they can be proud to inhabit. So that's really my calling, is that as a father that became a father later in life, is that I can look at my children and say, hey, look, when this was all happening, or when life presented me with a certain situation, that I made the very best of it, that I committed myself, that I didn't plop down in front of the TV and drink a beer and just call it a day. I was in action. I was committed. I was exercising. I was taking care of myself. I was setting the example. And that's really what I feel, if I can set the lead for other people to do the same thing, that's truly a blessing for me.
While we're here, Ted, I just mentioned to our audience that Ted Hanik from Hanik Health, and Ted has an interesting past, and I've been going to invite him now to share a little bit about some of his past, where he was doing some animation for The Simpsons. So yeah, and you've got something coming up there. Would you like to go into that and share about your stint with The Simpsons and what you still do in relation to that, and where we're headed for April?
Yeah. Everybody loves The Simpsons. So let me talk about, I had a different life before I was into health and wellness and mindset and everything. So I grew up a kid of the 70s and 80s, and I was like, we're talking about subconscious downloads, but I was planted in front of the TV watching copious amounts of television. I loved Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars and Back to the Future and all those things. So I grew up right near Hollywood. So that was a dream of mine, was to be in the animation industry, to be a part of that world. And I was lucky enough to achieve it. But I have such a story to tell when it comes to achieving a massive goal like that, and what it took to achieve that goal, and then ultimately what I learned being there. So, I think a lot of times we set a large vision or a large goal for ourselves, and then it's like you have this idea, right? This idea in your head of what it'll be like when you get there. And I think a lot of us, I mean, me, what I did was I thought like, well, if I could just get on The Simpsons, or if I could just get into animation, then I'll be happy. Then I will have like crossed the end zone. I spiked the football and I'm like, look, everybody, I'm an animator on The Simpsons and it's like the greatest thing ever. And we could certainly, I can make the conversation around, I fulfilled that in tenfold. But the reality was when I got that job, you walk in the front door and it's a very nondescript office building in North Hollywood at the time, or Los Feliz area. And it's basically like, there's your desk, here's your script, the director will see you soon and you'll have your scenes and get to work. And it's very much just a corporate environment and you're just churning out scenes. And it was very stressful. It was a very stressful environment because we had a quota. You had to produce a certain amount of art, a certain amount of animation scenes per week. And it didn't matter that I had been there for 10 minutes or for 10 years, you had the exact same quota. So a lot of us that are in the self-sabotage arena, mindset, health, and wellness, we have our own story. We were master self-saboteurs. And so that definitely fits me to a T. So I already had a very obsessive, stressed out mentality that I walked into The Simpsons with, this idea. I think a lot of artists have this idea, am I good enough? Do I measure up? You want to show somebody your art and go like, do you like it? Do you like it? Do you like it? And when you get on a show like that, and all of a sudden you're a new artist, and I was hired in the early 2000s, and the animation climate during that time was not very favorable to new talent. The animation industry was in decline at that time. So I was lucky to get in at all. And so I was treated very much like there's no ramp up period. You're just here and you better produce or you're not going to be here very long. So there was a lot of stress and anxiety that came with that. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, do I have what it takes to make it on this job? And it was very grueling. Amazing on one hand. I was working with an amazing group of very talented animators and professionals. But on the other hand, I was like sprinting, trying to keep up. And I really inhabited a lot of that stress and overwhelm and anxiety. And here I was in Los Angeles, doing the best I could. And on the weekends, I was, drinking copious amounts of alcohol and doing all the things that a self-saboteur would do. So I had to learn the hard way how to navigate this new responsibility. And I found that after 2 seasons working on The Simpsons, that the industry was in more of a decline, and I found myself outside of the animation industry. And that's when the true learning began, because I had to understand I had all this momentum, this massive amount of momentum to be in entertainment and like plant my flag. This is where I'm going to spend the remainder of my career. And then when the rug was basically pulled out from underneath me, I didn't know who I was anymore. So there I was sitting in the stoop of my apartment in Burbank, California, unemployed and months away from basically having nothing in the bank. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And I was extremely stressed out. And that's when the journey of discovery and really understanding who I am, that's when it really began. And so if I can really like correlate it back to what we were talking about before I got into the Simpson conversation, I mean, this is why I'm just so passionate about this conscious evolution, awakening, taking ownership back, because I made the fatal mistake, and nobody's fault but my own, was that I really pinned my belief, my worth as an artist, my worth as a professional on an organization such as The Simpsons. Like, as long as I'm employed here and I have the title of animator on The Simpsons, then hey, I'm okay. And my ego is very happy with that title, with that label. Well, when I didn't have it anymore, I didn't know who I was as an artist, and I didn't know who I was as a person anymore. So I had to really uncover, who am I? Who am I outside of this artistic endeavor? And people would tell me like, hey, why don't you go back to school and get a master's degree in fine art? And I realized at that time that I don't even know what I want to say as an artist. I have no clue what I want to say as an artist. I was just a technician. I was just an animator on The Simpsons. So I had to really come to terms with that trajectory and do the shadow work to really uncover, like, why did I get into animation in the first place? Why am I so drawn to the arts? Why am I so racked with guilt and stress and overwhelm now that I'm not here anymore? And why was it such a pressure cooker? And why did I plow myself on the weekends and during after hours getting drunk and doing all different kinds of different things? Why did I basically self-sabotage my entire trajectory on The Simpsons? So it's an interesting story. This is obviously just a thumbnail of it, but I've never actually told the intimate details of this story, because as you can imagine, for a lot of years, it was very raw and very real for me to share about. I didn't really want to talk about it too much because people, for a lot of years, I didn't even tell people I worked on The Simpsons because that's all they hear. They go, oh, you worked on The Simpsons, and all of a sudden they want to talk about The Simpsons, which is great. Let's talk about The Simpsons. But at a certain point, I was working to individuate and move away from that role because I felt like that was a big part of my healing journey, was to no longer see myself or be seen as an animator on The Simpsons. And it would keep coming back. It was like, oh my gosh, I heard you were an animator on The Simpsons. And then it was like, it's like this thing you can't let go of. And on one hand, you're super proud of it. On the other hand, it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't get away from it. And so I didn't really want to talk about it a lot of times. And I would break it out sometimes. I could draw Homer for somebody at a cocktail party or something. It's like, holy cow, look at what you can do. But I've decided, in my own reflection, that it's time to really share this story, and to share it not from the standpoint of like, look at me, look what I went through, but I really want to illustrate it as a way. It's like, it's an everyman story. Like, what if everybody has an experience, I think, of shooting towards a goal and finding, I look at it like a curtain, right? There's a curtain, and you're like, I'm going towards this massive goal. And when I get there, I can open up the curtain. It'll be like all the riches and all the things I imagine will be amazing. Well, what my experience was is basically I pulled back the curtain. It was like a brick wall. And I'm like, well, where's all the stuff that I thought I was going to get? And I think it's really important to understand, like, the root of the entire thing that I want to convey to people is to stay present, and that every day is a gift, no matter if you're an animator on The Simpsons or the guy taking out the trash. Every day is a gift to be here, to be involved, to be a part of this gift we call life. And I really want to convey through my story these ideas of all these subconscious downloads. Like, I'm going to illustrate my trajectory, how I arrived on The Simpsons, how I was completely obsessed with the animation industry and being a part of it, how I was there and overwhelmed and stressed in an anxious state when I didn't need to be. And then when I was no longer there, how I suffered so that I was no longer in the entertainment industry and I had to really find myself again. And I'll illustrate all these things in a way such that the viewer can really take in and understand their own lives, and their own self-sabotage, their own subconscious mind, and really see it in a new light. That's my hope, and that's my commitment. So that's coming up in late April. And if you want to check out, I have a whole website. It's just called mysimpsonstory.com. So you can see a little bit about that. And I'm putting it together now. And this is actually just a wrap up here. When I left the show, I figured this is such an amazing story. I wanted to get off my chest. I started to write a book back in 2002 about my experience. I titled it Waking Up in Springfield, because I really felt like I woke up on the show. I realized that I grew up, like, in a moment. I went from a child to adult. When I reached over, and behind the curtain was the brick wall, I realized, like, I'm a man now. It's like, it's not an illusion. It's not like this idea that, like, you walk into a studio like that and it's all like you're at Disneyland every day. It's a job, as well it should be. But I didn't have the mentality to really understand what this all meant. And so it'll be a way for me to weave this story in, and for you to get a deeper cut and understanding of actually what it's like behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. I'll share some intimate details about what it's like to be on production.
Do you have a screenshot, like you could share screen? And
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Give me one sec.
yeah, pull that up and show the audience.
So here's the page. It's called Waking Up in Springfield. So this is a little video here. You can check out a little story. It's a very short story about basically what we just talked about. And then here's me animating on The Simpsons in the summer of 2000, and a little bit about my story and how I grew up and how I just was obsessed with the entertainment industry and wanting to work in animation. And, like I said, these are intimate details that I've never shared before. And you'll learn all about overcoming self-sabotage, mind control, letting go of anger, resentment, shame, and apathy. These are all very low vibrational frequencies. So we're looking to escalate consciousness. And that's my story, is to really let go of a lot of this anger. That's been my biggest journey, my biggest health journey, mindset journey, is that I came into The Simpsons very immature. I was an immature artist. I was immature as a man. And that climate in there really drove that. I really held on very tightly to that resonant frequency, because they made it such that you felt very overwhelmed just being there. I think they liked you feeling overwhelmed. So I really had to let go of a lot of that trauma bond I had to feeling that way. So this will be a really interesting event. Like I said, I've never shared this before. I have early bird pricing running right now. It's $47. It'll be April 30th. And I have all kinds of extras. There's going to be an ebook. I'm going to put affirmations in there specific to my story. I'll have downloadable Simpson content. I think I'll put some model sheets and some drawing materials in there. I'm going to give everybody replay access to the replay. I have a different video lesson I did a while back, which is just basically the basics of Simpsons, like what it takes to produce the Simpsons. I showed a bunch of other artist materials that I had acquired while I was there. I used to run around and just tell people like, my gosh, like there's so many talented people there. It was amazing. So I would just go around and go, hey, do you mind if I Xerox that? It's just so cool. So I did a session where I actually showed some of these other artists' work, including my own. And I talked a little bit about the path of mastery. So I'll include that session. And then I'm going to record between now and the time we do this session. I'm going to do a little demo on how to draw the Simpsons. Like, how do we actually draw these characters? So if you have any, maybe there's a child or somebody or one of your kids is interested in learning how to draw, I would do a top to bottom lesson on basically how to draw for animation. And I mean, that's a great price for the $47. I'm going to tell all. It'll be a very interesting story. Like I said, I've never shared it before. So interesting way for me to share, and I'll frame it in what I've learned so far and my journey about health and wellness and mindset, and it'll be a healing experience for all involved.
Well, that's so cool. I would like to say that you are, in my opinion, an ideal person to have on this particular platform, because at the back of what I do, what I'm passionate about, is raising consciousness and awareness in myself and others. I feel that's the solution to many of the challenges we have. I mean, through ignorance, we do silly things, but when we become super conscious, and our consciousness is raised, and our awareness and our mindfulness, we make better quality choices and decisions, and we're more inclusive, realizing we're all one and we're all connected rather than separate and selfish and divisive. So I love having you on board here to share your passion about raising consciousness and awareness. We're aligned in that sense. And I think when you look at the 4 pillars of health, there's more than 4, but exercise, it's important. Diet or nutrition, hydration, and the most overlooked one, sleep. Because sleep's the restorative process that integrates what's happened during the day, what all the other processes you put in, and that's when the healing takes place, the nurturing and everything like that. And most people are too stressed, so they go to bed at certain hours, but they're not sleeping. They're not in that deep sleep state. They're tossing and turning and worrying about paying the bills and all that sort of stuff. So when you look at self-sabotage and you look at mindset, how to set your life up, it's people think it's their purpose. And when you were telling the Simpsons story, I was very emotional. I won't go into it here, but I've got a parallel where, I reached fame and fortune. I found the brick wall as well. And someone said, you must be so proud. And I had all these trophies. And about a month later, I quit that organization, walked away and dropped all those trophies in the bin. I don't have them at this point in time because I realized I had excelled in becoming outwardly seen, but I had excelled becoming inwardly empty and unfulfilled as far as my intimate relationships were concerned, because I was so devoted to that cause. And when I heard your story, I was just right in there with you, and I could feel the emotions, and I could feel, you mean this is it? I got to the top of the mountain and no one is really here to share it with me, and they don't care. So it's really about the journey. And I think the health journey, in my limited understanding, is about self-awareness and self-discovery and becoming conscious. And then when you realize, oh my God, this incredible vehicle that we're in, this incredible body, this incredible animated gift, and then the opportunity into life, the more lives you can touch, the more love that you can give. I mean, when we die, the only thing we'll get to take with us is how much like love we've become. And if we don't love ourselves, if we don't nurture ourselves, then we're preaching a false gospel. We're telling everyone else what to do, but not doing it ourselves. So that's for me, the inward health journey is the outward health expression of my life. So when someone comes up to me and says, I want what you got, and I said, yeah, you can have it. And they say, what's your secret? I said, I can tell you, but I have to kill you in the gym. You know, my secret is stop doing this madness, you know, and start to love yourself enough to make yourself a priority. Then what you bring to the table for others is powerful. It's magic. People are going to get lives changed because you're an inspiration. I just turned 69. And at 69, I can still do everything I could do when I was 30 and probably more. I wasn't that healthy at 30 or 35, 40, at least at 40 or 50 when I reach those pinnacles of, So yeah, what's your take on the sleep and especially water, the hydration? I know you have a passion around water as well. There's a story in there. So yeah, tell us about the water first.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important what you brought up, right? I mean, like it goes back to the beginning of our conversation, like keep it simple. Like what are like people want something really sexy, like a sexy supplement or whatever the case may be, like a biohack, there's a lot of biohackers out there like Dave Asprey and stuff. And I think nothing against them. There's a lot of value in these things that we can start to invest in and implement. But it really goes back to the fundamentals and like proper hydration, proper sleep, proper connection, all the things like diet. Like look at it like a wheel. You want it to be balanced, this wheel to be balanced. So hydration, you brought up hydration. Like I thought I knew everything I needed to know about hydration back when I was, getting my certification. I had a reverse osmosis system and I figured that was good. I was taking care of my water. And I discovered a very special medical grade water out of Japan. It's a device that takes water and electrically splits it. And what it does, it creates an abundance of molecular hydrogen and hydroxide ions in the water, which sounds like fantastical. When I first heard it, I'm like, what are you talking about? But it's fundamentally different water. And it's really like a charge for the body. It's like living food for the body. And it's shifted my entire experience of health, really, because it deepened my consciousness because our thoughts flow through water. And so what sort of water are you drinking? Like I saw what this was and I just became so passionate about it because I'm like, I'm sitting here coaching people about diet, exercise, like all the things. And I'm like, you can change your water. Like that's pretty easy to do. And I've just seen miracles with it. So it's fundamental to what I do and how I help people. And it's something that I feel very blessed that I have it in my life. It's a huge piece of my personal health and wellness. And like I tell people, it's like, I feel like it gives me an unfair advantage. Like I have an unfair advantage. And it's like, I want you to have an unfair advantage too. Like I look at it like, look, if you're taking in this content, obviously there's a reason for that. If you're committed to your health and wellness, there's a reason for that as well. If you look at like subconscious mind, what's going on out in the world right now, like the world has no interest in you being healthy. People like that, Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab, all these people, whatever, these nefarious agendas, they don't want you healthy. So I'm like, you want to stick it to them? Get as healthy as possible. Get as healthy as possible. Invest in this water device that I'm talking about because that's a major, major piece of sticking it to them and being optimal. So yeah, get your hydration in order, detoxification. Nobody talks about detoxification. Like some people think it's just like, it's hearsay. It doesn't exist. Well, I can tell you that detoxification is vital. Look up in the sky. They're spraying us like bugs. Detoxification is vital to your recouping and reclaiming what is lost, which is your health and vitality. Give up the morning coffee. The morning coffee is driving your stress response through the roof. It's really about bringing down your stress response, lowering cortisol, moving towards adequate sleep, getting adequate sleep, turning off all these devices at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, getting the blue light out of your eyes, getting good deep sleep, having, like you said, some, focusing on sleep, like sleep hygiene, make sure the room is nice and dark, do some earthing and grounding. I mean, I even turn off my Wi-Fi at night. Like my computer here is hardwired, but unfortunately I still have Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi is in a Faraday cage, but look, you can like start to lower all the EMF, start to lower all the stress. Like you don't want to be going towards bed and watching like some kind of like, news broadcast is going to jack your stress response. Like I said, keep it simple, but we live in a complicated world. And so you have to really focus on how can you simplify and how can you start to take some energy back. So it's really about, what can you be doing today to help other people? And it's like, it's my calling to do everything in my power to help you on the other end of this call to take your power back. Take your power. Like, we all have to learn, like our great grandparents had some sort of connection to how to do like home remedies. They knew how to take care of things if something were to happen. And this is history that's been basically lost and paved over by the allopathic system. They've stolen our heritage from us. And basically they want you to be disempowered and to look to the system to fix you. And so I say, screw that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to take my power back and I'm going to do everything in my power to reclaim my health. And I'll look to the allopathic system if I'm in an acute state. And that's what it's meant for, the acute trauma-based care.
Well, see, one thing that really triggers me is if you've got a really serious bout of, say, vertigo, yeah, you might have to take Stemetil because, you move 1 millimeter, you're going to vomit. But Stemetil has side effects, and every chemical compound that the pharmaceutical companies have side effects because they're designed to work on symptoms, not on root causes. And what a lot of people don't realize is that if they had a healthy lifestyle to begin with, they wouldn't even need the supplements and nutritionals. They're helpful, and I do take supplements and nutritionals. But basically, we all fight a common enemy, and that enemy is called gravity. Right? We're all trying to stay above ground, and the ground wants us sooner or later, right? And I think what a lot of people don't realize is they don't love themselves enough to take care of themselves. They're looking for validation and approval from outside themselves. I did it a whole life. I mean, I almost said to someone, I earned millions of dollars and I paid out paying for love, like doing good deeds and favors, all for the wrong reasons, like hoping I'll get recognition, hoping I'll get fame, hoping I'll get more influence and power, all those activities that people are running and striving to do. And I've seen people knock themselves out to get approval from their parents or their siblings or, their brothers and sisters, whatever. And it's failed. So I said to someone, if one apple doesn't satisfy, a whole truckload won't. And if one act of kindness or one deed of altruism doesn't bring you that reward, you can spend a lifetime seeking it through that process, but people don't wake up. They're on some sort of madness trajectory. And I can see that you have really woken up, thank God, at a lot earlier age than I did. And I know that people will really blossom and benefit from all the things that you've put into your life and the changes you've made and now what you bring to the table, because health is it's a rainbow. It's a holistic rainbow. It's a multi-prismed kaleidoscope. There's not one aspect that can work without the other. If your relationship is toxic, you can be working out in the gym and pulling all the health stunts you want, but that toxicity of that relationship, and it may not be with a significant other, it could be with a boss, it could be with a family member, it could be with someone you've let in where you don't have boundaries, where you don't understand that at a subconscious or psychological level, you're being interfered with. And that's my concern about what the media is putting forward. So, I've abandoned the TV set and the mainstream media, but then you've got YouTube now pumping you with more ads than TV does. Like they've just seized all the platforms now to say that we can advertise with or without your approval, without monetization. So people who had a pure platform now are polluted with all these brain-numbing ads that really are an insult to consciousness. So really, it's not just the planes over the above with the chemtrails and all the spray and the bugs. It's the nanoparticles in food. It's the additives and preservatives on the shelf. It's all the different processes that are used to store food and bring it to you. I mean, I bring home produce and it's dead in the fridge in a day or two because it's been sitting in cold storage or somewhere for a while. So communities are the way of the future for survival and thrival. And what's your take on what I'm sharing at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's really vital and really important. I mean, what you're sharing is I mean, what we live in an age, very egocentric age.
Mm,
Everything is very focused on ego, and the ego is very transitory, and the ego wants to suffer. The ego wants to define itself by its surroundings and this finite experience of life. And I think it's high time that we release a lot of this egoic desire and a lot of the egoic suffering. And that's really the calling of this time. I mean, if I focus too much on what's going on in the world, it will make me somewhat manic. It makes me like crazy. And so I realized that I have to breathe and release, and realize that my soul, my connection goes on forever. And the ego is what wants to suffer and figure this all out. It wants to figure out a future that hasn't even happened yet. And it wants to be pissed off, and it wants to be justified, and it wants to be correct. And I just acknowledge it and I let it go. And that's when I bring more peace into my life. So we all have to do the work. It's a separation, and that's challenging. It's challenging because we've all grown up in this culture. We've all grown up in being very rewarded, being very egoic, and being very focused on, well, how can I get mine? And I think it's really important to take in content. Like, I take in content from people that I admire, or people that I know their content's going to raise my consciousness. But I think it's also important to be like, look at social media, right? Like Facebook or something like that. I always focus on how can I create more than I consume. And so you don't want to be just mindlessly scrolling and mindlessly, like, I mean, these things can become like, it just takes over your whole life. And what has happened to us, unfortunately, is that our attention spans get shorter and shorter and shorter. And we're like goldfish. We have like no attention span. It's like shiny little object. And so I think it's important to, have a period of time where, disconnect yourself from some of this technology, like turn it off, put it in a drawer, go outside and just be with people and be with your kids. And something that I have to constantly remind myself, because I like this call, right? I make connection with people through this portal.
mm,
And it's something that I have to always keep it in its proper perspective. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also like part of what they're driving us towards. At the same time, they want us all to be very much interfacing through our technology constantly, and making the technology more desirable than the real world. So I think it's really important to collaborate, like you said, like make connections, go talk to your neighbor, start a garden project, raise some backyard chickens if you can. And these are the things that give you true enjoyment, true connection. Like, I have chickens in my backyard. I go out there every morning. I try to pick one up and, pet it. And it's like, you take a moment and you just stand in the sun and reflect and just say, thank you, thank you, thank you for my life, for air in my lungs, for purpose in my heart. And you give thanks and glory to God, and realize that when you do that, when you stand in that place, you don't suffer any longer. You give that suffering to God, because it's not your burden to bear. And we live in very interesting times. I feel like we all chose this time to be here. This is a
yeah.
mass awakening. And I look at this as like a beautiful time. Like, wow, what a time to be alive. I know no matter what happens, I stand in my commitment and in my integrity. Like, I will never waver in my commitment and my integrity, no matter what happens. I know that about myself. So it's a beautiful place to be. It's like, hey, who can I help today to stand in their own power and take their own power back? And how can we rise up? How can we collectively say enough and dictate how this is going to go? I look at this as we have an opportunity to really stand in this place and say, what does a community garden look like? How do we collaborate and start to grow our own food? And I'll tell you what, that's like, it's just a richer experience of life. And I look forward to the day when we all have that kind of collaboration together, and we can start to understand that the power structures have been conspiring against us for a very, very, very long time. And it's
Absolutely.
time for us to say enough with all this dark and nefarious agenda that they've kept in the shadows for a long time. But now it's out dancing among us. It's in plain sight. And I feel like I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy that like was very passionate about my health and wellness, my consciousness. Look, I worked on the Simpsons for a while, so it's something that, like, even drawing, like doing something artistic, I feel that really changed my biology. Just the practice of doing something repetitively over and over and over, and the path of mastery towards a desired outcome is something that really fulfills your soul's purpose, is to be on a path of mastery, to master something, even if that's mastering your consciousness, mastering letting go of your attachment to all these states. And so it's something that has informed my path, my trajectory. And that's really what I love to share with people, is like, learn from me, learn from my story. I mean, we all have something to share. And I feel like I have something to share because I achieved something pretty big. I fell from grace and I had to redefine and learn anew, learn to walk all over again. And that really taught me a lot of things about myself. And I'm constantly reminded that how much stress everybody's living with. So it's high time that we release a lot of it and start to understand how this all works and take our health back.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Ted. I was thinking while you were talking how mirrored these feelings are to myself. And if I look back on my achievements, they all pale into insignificance compared to the answer I gave to the question. Someone says, "What do you do?" And I said, I could tell you a whole lot of labels. I do things. Yeah, I've got a couple of businesses. I do a lot of online web stuff. I'm a coach, counselor, blah, blah, blah. I said, but I think my greatest achievement of my life so far in 69 years is I live life on my own terms. I live life on my own terms. That means I do not submit to anything outside myself that I don't feel I want to. And they said, "Oh, what do you mean?" If I don't want to work, I don't work. If I don't want to do a project, I don't do a project. If I want to stop in the middle of something, I stop. Yes, there's consequences. Yes, there's pain sometimes. But if I don't live life on my own terms, then I'm that robot you talked about. I've already taken the little plug in the back of the neck, I'm already there. And, I pulled that sucker out and disconnected it a long time ago, and I ain't putting it back, not for anybody. And I thought, what if they cut off my bank accounts and pension and God knows what else, what if it gets tough for me? Well, everyone else is lined up to drop dead anyway. So, I might as well drop dead that way. I'm very comfortable living life on my own terms, and my own dignity, and my own spiritual connection to source, to God. And, a lot of people say, what religion are you? I said, well, I'm an earthian, and yeah, I believe in star signs, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I'd like a brand new car, I'm an equestrian, people go on with all these trite sort of situations and they invest in them. It's like you go up a tree in life and people go out on a branch and they just hang there on that branch for their whole life. I go up the tree, I hang on the branch, get a little bit tired of it after a while, come back to the center and I go up to the next one. And I come back, next one. And that's been my life, and it'll be my life till I die. And I think we have an opportunity in this life to expand our consciousness. And I think that's what life's for, to grow to your full potential. And what I was hearing in your words before, correct me if I'm wrong, is that irrelevant to where you've been, you don't want to get to the end of your life and meet the man you could have been. You want to look yourself in the eye at the end and say, cool, that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely fallen into patterns. I think we all do. You fall into patterns where you get comfortable, right? You get comfortable. And I think if anything, the last 2 years has taught me, I mean, I never thought of myself as a particularly religious man. I just did my thing and I was pretty happy just plugging along. But in the last 2 years, I've really realized that there is evil in the world. So if there's evil in the world, there's also lightness in the world. There is a God, there is connection, there is source. And I think it's important that we all reconnect. I mean, we've been living in a very Luciferian indoctrination camp where everybody's very satanic and very focused on how can I get mine? You know, everybody's about me, me, me. And, you know, I've really come to this place of understanding that it's about us together. It's about connectedness. It's about connecting back to God and realizing that our lives have definitive purpose. And what is your purpose? Like connecting to your purpose. And then it, like you said, whatever you're doing, like I work very hard on what I'm doing, but I never consider it work. Like
Mm.
I love everything that I do. And so it becomes, everything becomes wrapped in passion instead of responsibility. It's like, oh, I have to do this. Well, I get to, or I'm allowed to. I'm in a place where I'm manifesting something that I desire to pull towards me. And I think it's really important that no matter what you're doing, that you connect to that on some level, whatever that may be. And like I said, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that it's something that you don't want to leave the music inside. And I think a lot of people, you know, they live with this resonant frequency that they picked up from their childhood, which is a big part of what I take people through in the self-sabotage coaching, is to understand these adaptations, right? So, I mean, it's like, it's not, nothing's wrong. It's working perfectly by design, but you will pick up whatever your environment was as a kid, your parents, your teachers, like all of it. And that will give you a predictable cascade of like how your life will look and what sort of decisions you'll make and what you'll be afraid to do. And like all of it will become like these barriers. And you just kind of like bounce off these barriers. And all of a sudden they get smaller and smaller and smaller because, oh, I tried to do this one time, it didn't work. So you have a scar and you're not willing to go there anymore. Well, it's like we have to break apart these barriers and realize that they're self-imposed. It's what's called learned helplessness. So we learn to basically hold ourselves back. And so it's really about like break the chains and take some calculated risk. Get out there and swing for the fences. You know, this is your life. This isn't a practice run. This is your life. And it's like, I look at it like no matter what they're saying outside in the world, you know, whatever they're telling you have to do with your bodily autonomy, it's like, it makes no actual sense whatsoever. It makes no sense. Like, I am my own person. Like, this is the country of Ted, and you're not allowed to like break the sphere of my country. And I don't understand how people so willingly allow themselves to be manipulated and controlled by supposed authority figures, just under the auspices of trying to keep you healthy and safe, which is complete and total nonsense. So it's obviously, it's like, you know, it becomes polarizing very quickly, but you should have the autonomy to make your own individual decisions and choices for how your life works out. That's supposedly what a free country is about, right?
The sad part is, if you never before in history is it highlighted so much now as the bungling and myopic consciousness of it, of leadership in the world. You know, like you're now seeing some of the main figureheads in different countries displaying the most gross incompetence, the worst possible decisions, the worst possible outcomes. I mean, I'd hate to be a politician and, you know, kill me now, stick a pencil in my eye. But, you know, and I'm not comparing my own intellect or intelligence with theirs, but they're playing God. They're trying to make decisions for masses of people. And the thing is, there's a section of humanity that unfortunately doesn't have the bandwidth or capacity to make correct decisions. So they'll always be steered around. And I don't look down on them and I don't feel bad about them. They have some excellences in their area, but herd consciousness and masses going to the specials on the supermarket shelf, you know, like pushing and shoving. But there are a percentage of people who are awake. For years, I put my posts on social media and signed them Fearless Love. And that's a writing pseudonym for me. Recently, I've been signing off a few posts just Awakening, because I felt this doesn't belong to me. I don't need it identified with myself. So Awakening just goes out to everybody because that's what it is. So there's no claim of authorship. But when I sit down and think of these things, and I think of the like-minded people like yourself and, you know, our mutual friend Ed, who for many years there I've been watching and listening to. And I've been skeptical of the consciousness realm and the connection that people talk about, this great awakening and things like that. You know, I've come from a Judeo Christian ethic and background. I looked into all the major religions and belief systems. But what I realize is it's either fear running your life or love. If it's love and connectedness, there's a lot of trust there. If there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of lack of trust. And I think, Ted, you're a bright light in a dimmed out world at the moment. The world itself is beautiful. It's just this funny species called human beings. we're really
we're a peculiar bunch, aren't we?
We're wreaking havoc on the plot, I can tell you that for now. But I just want to encourage everybody who's watched this and listened to this. Ted's details will be in the footnotes. We'll include his social media links, and people can hit you up on, is it www.hanikhealth.com? That's correct?
That's me. That's me.
And Ted is very amiable to talk to people, and I know he's a wealth of information, especially in the self-sabotage stuff. I mean, underneath what you do is a foundation, and if the foundations are not right, what you try to build will come down. And I think that's what Ted's about, is firm foundations. And correct me if I'm wrong. That's my assessment of you, that you're about firm foundations.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, if the subconscious programming isn't in place, if we don't have a belief in that program, in the subconscious, this was my experience. I give people diet and they couldn't stick to it. So I started focusing more on subconscious reprogramming because it has a lot more sticking power.
Yeah. So for a takeaway, what would you say to people watching now that would be a good takeaway from them?
I mean, gosh, takeaway. I would say focus on the fundamentals. Keep it really simple. I mean, if you're wherever you are in your health picture, whatever you desire to pull towards you, I would say focus on that. Like set aside, even if it's 5 minutes a day. This is a practice that I've gotten into in the last couple of years, where no matter where you are, like financially or whatever the case may be, set aside some time, like you were talking about, where you can just sit aside some time, sit quietly, and imagine the life that you wish to inhabit, and really focus on pulling that towards you. Give yourself the gift of imagining that life and feeling it real. Like, what does it look like? What does it smell like? Who are you with? And then we start to like move towards you, start to pull it towards you. And so the two things start to come together, and you start to journal, start write it down, start to like have gratitude, have an attitude of gratitude. Like everything about my life really transformed when I gave thanks and just had gratitude for everything. You know, like it's so easy to complain about everything, like, oh my gosh, it's this, it's that, why? And, you know, we all fall victim to that, but I have to breathe and go to gratitude. Go to gratitude. It's a simple takeaway. Focus on what you'd like to pull towards you, manifest it, envision it, go to gratitude, focus on your breath. A lot of us are in very short breath cycles. You want to focus on deep belly breath. That'll automatically move you into more parasympathetic rest and digest, autonomic nervous system. If you don't have a quality chiropractor, I can't recommend enough going for quality chiropractic care. Focus on proper hydration. Hydration is huge. If you want some insight into that, reach out to me. And yeah, I mean, it's a detox. I mean, I can go on and on. Detox is huge, but you know, focus on supporting the body. The two things that make sickness or ill health is toxicity and deficiency. So if you're toxic, we got to remove toxicity. If you're deficient, we got to bring up deficiency. So we got to work on your nutrition, maybe some targeted supplementation. And so just focus on those two areas, detoxing and bringing up your nutrition, and just keep it as simple as possible. If you want any more guidance or tips, I know I could go on and on, but reach out to me. I'll give you some more practical tips. I start my day every day with a morning smoothie, a nutrient dense morning smoothie. And that's been game changer for me. A great way to start the day. You front load the day with hydration, hydrating with fruits in there, lots of really good nutrients. And if you go to my website, I have a free smoothie guide that you can download for free, and that'll give you a good start to your day.
Awesome. I have a saying for most people that they don't know what they want. And I said, you should listen to that Spice Girls song, I know what I want, what I really, really want, because if you decide what you want and then you move towards that and you take action, the action steps, and you see what's working and what isn't working, and you keep changing what you're doing to get what you want. And I think even the most simplest people decided they wanted something and they had to get uncomfortable to get it. So every person on the planet has experienced success, but they're just not aware of it. Even the ones that put down in the destitute. I mean, if someone wants to fail miserably, they decided what they want and they went and got that. I mean, really, when I see to how bent out of shape some people are, to what extent they've gone to achieve that result, there's a bit of mastery in there to messing themselves up. So from both of us, look up, live, move towards a really positive outcome and decide what you want. And deciding what you want is saying, I want to reach my potential. I want a life that I'm proud of and that nurtures me and the people around me. That's a good place to start. Your goal will be what you want and you'll decide. And Ted's goal's what he has and what he wants. And I just want to be a contributor. And where I see light, I want to pour more fuel so it grows more brightly. And you're a bright light in the world, Ted. Thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate this interview and your precious, valuable time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And you're also a bright light in these times. So keep doing what you're doing. And if there's anything I can do to be of service further, I'm always here for you.
Thank you. So just remember to hit the subscribe and notification bell. Notification bell is important so that you get future videos, because the subscribe buttons, likes and comments don't seem to do much to any of the algorithms. It seems to be that bell that does the job. So thanks, Ted, and we'll catch you around the block up the track, and we'll do it again.
All right. Thank you so much.